Brad Sephy Rajani is the only head coach the Atlanta Reign has ever known, guiding the team since its introduction into the Overwatch League in 2019. After a solid start in Season 2, the Reign teetered on the edge of good to average in the third season. In the second part of our interview with Brad, we delve into the challenges that the last year posed and explore topics like the rise of Babybay and his eventual retirement, Erster's quiet season, finding out Edison was a Flex DPS, how the Reign was allowed to sign Saucy, despite him being below the official cutoff range given to the public, how the Reign manages to pick up talent like Pelican, and signing Kai and letting go of SharP. Beyond topics that just concern the team, Brad also weighed in on general Overwatch esports related topics, like the big issue with ranked play, the 30-day Contract Termination Clause, and the weaknesses and strengths of the structure of Season 4. We hope you will enjoy the second and final part of our interview with Brad Sephy Rajani. Now, you mentioned Erster, you mentioned him by the Ultimates, but I think generally speaking, okay, so like I had my designated Chinese Overwatch experts telling me like this guy is incredible, but he also has a bit of a reputation of being a spicy player behind the scenes. But when I look at how his Season 2 went, that wasn't the symptoms of a player that like wants to play the me game or whatever. That was the symptoms of someone that actually slots in where the team needs him. So he played some diva, I remember, generally like being flexible across the season, more like really, like a really flexible type of player. So what was Erster like? How did he fit into the team? What kind of roles did he play? And then, how do you feel about that particular performance that Erster put up in Season 2 and specifically?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, whatever reputation Erster has for being spicy or toxic in any way, I don't know where that comes from because that doesn't match my experience with him.
Right.
My experience with him is that he's very rock solid emotionally. He's in complete control of his emotions. Never really been toxic towards anyone, ever. So whatever that came from, completely undeserved, in my opinion. In terms of gameplay and his strengths, I mean, I think one of Erster's greatest strengths, probably his greatest strength as a player, is staying alive. He knows how to stay alive in situations where other players don't. So in Season 2, when he's playing Brig, one of the, keeping your Brig alive was just like paramount to winning. Like, if your Brig is in the game and healing everybody, like, just by default, they are carrying. And Erster would get out of situations that many lesser Brigs would die in. In terms of like flanking metas with like flanking heroes, like not like the Genji that we saw in Season 3 with like the armor and the pocket and like the frontlining Genji, but more like a flanking Genji, where like you're setting up like a 2-2-2 Winston Diva dive, and your Genji's taking like a long route without a pocket at all. Erster's exceptional at that. He's an exceptional flanker / stay alive guy. He knows how to kind of like work his way into a team fight by himself without resources. That wasn't really. This is part of the sort of like the confusion as to why he didn't perform as well in Season 3. First of all, he didn't perform as well in Season 3 because of his motivation and COVID, and he wasn't playing the game as much, as he needed to be. But even then, when Genji became meta, the type of Genji that became meta was this like hard frontlining, hyper aggressive, give me all the resources and I'll just carry the game kind of thing. EQO popped off because EQO loves a pocket. Yaki, probably the best Genji player in the league last year, because of the type of Genji that got played, in my opinion, Yaki. In fact, if you ask all of our players, they all think Yaki was the best. It's just like universally agreed. Yes. Everyone thinks Yaki was just insane. But it's a very specific type of Genji. it's like this guy's unkillable because of armor packs and resources and all this other stuff. You know what I mean? So it's just not the kind of Genji that Erster excelled at. It wasn't his style of Genji. So that was one of our problems. Erster is just an incredibly intelligent, cerebral player who's very cool under pressure. But he's not the best like farm player. Like, let me farm up the blade, let me farm up this, let me farm up that. Like that's, you know, like give me the resources and let me get my ult as quickly as possible. That's not the kind of player that Erster is. And that's kind of what you needed out of your Flex DPS. That was part of the problem as well. On top of just him not playing as much as we needed him to because he wanted to, you know, he just COVID and everything affecting him. So, and living in the U.S., cooped up in his apartment. It wasn't a great season for Erster, but through much of it was not like fault of his own. It was like, you know, all of the tide pushing against him. So I'm excited to see what he can do next season.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Of course, reuniting with his coach from, I think it was Apex Season 2, if I'm not mistaken.
He's wanted to be on Shanghai for a while. He's wanted to be on Shanghai, you know, for a very long time now. So I know that is the team he, in his heart, he wanted to be on the most. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think a pattern of like players following the coaches that they trust is actually really powerful in Overwatch. And I mean, you with the academy team pretty much had that as well, right? Like a lot of the guys that played with you over the seasons, like, yes, you have the top recruitments from the outside, but you also bring up players frequently, right? Now, I guess let's take that point then immediately. We, like, a big point across that season was like understanding that your academy team was just an incredible team, like possibly like one of the best teams in the world at the time. And scrimming against them was such a boon to you guys that you were able to also perform very strongly. Like, you were one of the best teams throughout the regular season. The famous upset in the playoffs against the Shock. So what, like, when you have a team that not only recruits and is able to promote their players of that caliber, but also then gets additional value by legitimately having one of the best internal scrim partners you could have without giving any strategies towards like the general pool and getting to develop in that regard. Why does an organization shut their academy program down like you guys did, I think in March last
year? Well, I mean, one of the main reasons we shut it down is because we ended up promoting so many of the players, or many of those players got into, you know, owl teams or whatever, that we had to do an entire rebuild academy team. But just like basically Saucy and trigger free staple components. We did try to rebuild the team. You know, like we recruited fans and KSA and Haku and who's the main support player that I'm forgetting about all of a sudden? He played on Fusion Uni.
Kaka.
Parker, thank you. You know, so we recruited some players, and we also had Perfect, still, I believe at the time.
Yes.
Anyways, we or maybe we had gotten rid of him by that. He might have been traded
to TT1, was it? Right?
Yeah. But like the history is a little blurry for me. But you know, we did attempt to rebuild. We didn't perform as well on the build, and I think it's difficult sometimes. You know, like it's not super. It's not as if it's just like magically easy to build a roster out of nowhere. You have to have a good roster when it all comes together. Are players that have chemistry with each other, that appreciate being teammates with each other, that get along with each other, that want to spend time with each other outside of the game as well as in the game, that just playstyle wise are compatible with each other. And then there's the coaching. Like there's a whole lot that goes into making a large team, right? And for all of the benefits that an academy team brings, it also drains resources. For example, I did a lot of coaching with ATL Academy, and I had to do a lot of coaching on the rebuild of ATL Academy as well. That's my time spent. That's other coaches' time spent.
Yep.
Investing into players that are not part of the main team. You know? In the case of the former ATL Academy, most of those players would eventually be promoted. You know what I mean, or traded in some capacity. So there's like a lot of value there. But like when we went to Korea and we beat Runaway 4-0, and then they lost Element Mystic. I was in Korea with them. I was coaching with the team in the 2 months leading up to that. It's a lot of effort, and that's time spent not scouting. That's time spent not watching other pro games necessarily. Sometimes, because you're focused on your own scrims or whatever. So there's resources that go the other direction as well, not just financial, but also time.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
As to why you would abandon the team. I mean, if the team is good enough to put up a fight, then there's a lot of value there.
Mm-hmm.
But we found that even last season with our 12-man roster, that our B team was just underperforming in scrims relative to some of our other partners. Like our B team was good enough to beat some of the worst teams in Overwatch League in B team scrims, but they were not good enough to put up a fight against our main team for the most part during the season. And last season, our main team we were scrim warriors. We only lost 3 teams. We only had a losing record against 3 teams.
Mm-hmm.
We had winning records against like everybody else. Like teams that we lost to, like we lost to Florida multiple times in the regular season, but we would beat them in scrims. We had a tie record with Glads in scrims, and I think we lost to them in matches. Like we lost to so many teams in matches and officials that we would beat in scrims.
Mm-hmm.
And so our B team would also struggle against our A team in scrims. So we started to just like sort of question the value of having a 12-man roster or the academy team or all of these other things if that team couldn't put up a good fight. When they could put up a huge fight like ATL Academy did, the original ATL Academy, then the value was tremendous. But it's really hard to build 2 strong rosters.
Yeah.
That's a very difficult undertaking, and it kind of like lightning strikes only once kind of thing. I'm not saying that it couldn't be done again, but obviously there's teams out there like American Tornado, that do exceptionally well, and can beat many OWL teams. But yeah, right now in terms of this year, why don't we have an academy team this year? It's mostly budget, but it's also just questions about how many, can we build a team strong enough to compete with our Overwatch League? Or is that just too hard to do right now in the current environment with COVID and people being, ping and all that stuff? Can you really do it? So I think Overwatch 2 might be the comeback of academy teams, when there's a lot of new players in the game. But for now, a little dry.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, okay, then let's look at season 3 and think like one of the things that was really awkward about this season is because from the timeline that other coaches have told me is you basically had no chance to account for hero pools in your roster building, given that you were basically told once that, like, at least the brunt of it was already figured out, right?
Yeah.
I think it might have already been like very close before season start, right? So do you think you would have built differently had you known that Hero Pulse was coming in?
No, because last season our roster was we just got everybody. We just had 12 players.
Right.
We had every base covered, you know what I mean, in terms of hero pool that you could possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't help us a ton in the sense that because the hero pools changed so often, even if you had players that were better on certain heroes or whatever, the chemistry loss between swapping your roster in and out too much, you know what I mean, was too difficult to deal with. Like there's a 7-man roster did just as well in hero pools as a 12-man roster because the 7-man roster at least had the benefit of like working through adversity in the moment. But in hero pools are very chaotic. So having that sort of like inbuilt like sort of communication and chemistry within like a smaller tight-knit group also provided benefits. So I don't think that any particular roster building method, whether it's small or large, had any serious advantage in hero pools. There were trade-offs on both sides. I think it's just chaos, though. I don't think it's good for the game. I like the fact that at least they're more spaced out this season. It's going to be hero pools, but there's going to be fewer variations.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so you you start the season, and I mean, it made sense when you watch the games. It didn't make sense on paper, at least for people known for like who just looked at the name value of the DPS players you were fielding. But Babybay had sort of, I would argue, possibly he played the best Overwatch he ever played during that time. So why was he chosen ahead, for instance, of someone like Erster or I don't quite remember if it was either or Edison, but like you always have great DPS. You wouldn't expect necessarily to start Babybay ahead of them, right? And I think he even might have. I'm fuzzy on my timelines there. If SharP was available at the time, he in terms of eligibility,
He was available,
right?
He was.
So
I mean, well, the reason we didn't play Erster over Babybay is because we needed hit scan players, and Erster is a strong player, but we don't rate his hit scan very high. You know, like he's not equipped to play the Widow and the Ashes of the world.
True.
Even his Tracer, you know, it's passable, but I don't think even Erster would claim to be like a strong Tracer player. Would never suggest that he should play over like the likes of like Edison or even SharP Tracer. But what we needed was a ranged hit scan player. You know, we needed McCree, Ash, Widow, like that's what we needed. And so it was really between Babybay and SharP for the most part. And, you know, Babybay did play the best Overwatch of his career in Season 3, in my opinion. And he grinded for that. You know? And I'm not saying that SharP didn't either, but SharP had it in his head that he wanted to be a true Flex DPS. So, for example, you go look at like SharP's like ranked games during the time, he's picking Tracer a lot. I mean, a lot. Anytime something goes wrong, he gets, you know, dove by like a ball on a Tracer or whatever on a hit scan hero, range hit scan. Players like, I'll just use Kai as an example. If Kai's playing an Ash and he gets dove by a ball and Tracer and he dies, he sticks on the hero. You know what I mean? Like he wants to keep grinding out. How do I play Ash and Widow? You know what I mean? And survive against, you know, a whole team trying to kill me, right? Whereas SharP says, I'm a Flex DPS player. In this moment, this is a great opportunity for me to go Tracer. You know, and like I'm just talking about your average ranked game. You know what I mean? So what ends up happening is like lots of your hours get split into heroes that maybe somebody else in the team is outperforming you. You know, so SharP has a really good Tracer. In terms of players that can play both like a Tracer and also play like a sniper, hard to do better than SharP. But Season 3 was a season of specialists. If you played Tracer, you were basically playing Tracer the entire map. Mm-hmm. And if you were playing Widow or Ash, you were playing Widow or Ash the entire map. Yep. You know, you weren't really transitioning between these two heroes. And the skill on these heroes has gone so high in terms of specialization. Like Tracer specialists can do so much right now compared to Tracer generalists. That's to aim to be good at both Tracer and also be good at like Widow or Ash. That's an extremely difficult undertaking. I wouldn't ask that of any player, right? I mean, I would not try to tell Eddie that he needs to be the best Tracer in the league and also needs to be the best Ash. You know, good luck. Like that's too much to ask of any single player, right? So that's kind of like, you know, SharP was kind of torn between this world of, do I become like a flanking DPS player or do I become like a hit scan player? And he had it in his heart that he wanted to be more of a Flex DPS. So like when Genji came out, SharP was spamming games on Genji, the ladder. You know, like he had different aspirations than to what we needed. Babybay was very comfortable in just slotting into like the role that we needed him for. So Babybay would spend all of his time practicing Ash, all of his time practicing Widow, for the most part. And this is part of the story of how Babybay basically won the starting position. Is just he had a clearer vision of what he wanted to do that season, and SharP was kind of torn between two worlds. And you know, we tried to work with SharP to becoming basically more of a sniper player, but his heart was less in it, basically. But even though he would cognitively like accept the fact that he needs to grind Tracer and Ash or Widow and Ash, you know, just a big part of his own internal mindset. Like it'd be too easy to give up on the hero and go to the hero that he actually wants to play. Because ranked games are miserable. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's hard enough to just be in the game sometimes. but the player hero that you don't necessarily want to play while getting dove by a bunch of people, like it's hard. It takes a lot of mental fortitude to fight through that. And it gets worse when you're a bench player in the midst of COVID, locked in your apartment. So, there's just a lot of headwinds, motivationally speaking, for SharP. Whereas Babybay had a very clear vision of what he wanted to achieve. And Babybay had been through lots of ups and downs already as a player. He's already been in a situation where he gets benched, back to starter, back to the bench. Like Babybay's been through all of that, so he's just a little bit more mature in that way, I guess. And he really went for it in season 3. And he did play the best Overwatch that he ever has.
How did you find out he was going to retire?
I mean, it was a decision that he discussed a lot with the team. He even went to the team for advice, like, should I transition? And he went to me for advice. So it was not some sort of thing out of the blue. It was like, we knew that he had a history in Crossfire in CSGO of being very good at games like Valorant. And we knew that FaZe was good in him. We knew that they were offering a lot of money. So it was a decision that was discussed amongst players and coaches well in advance. And we all kind of gave him our advice, and then he made a decision. So it wasn't out of the blue.
Yeah. Now the interesting part about the story, the explanation you gave for SharP about him wanting to be a Flex DPS player. Now, viewers of Contenders Korea at the time, or not at the time, but previously, probably only knew Edison as like this Widow one trick that just had like incredible clips here now. I remember he had just an incredible clip where he basically like hard carried a submap or whatever. Now suddenly this guy also has a Genji, and it's sort of like the different direction to what you would have expected. And like, how did you guys find out that this guy also apparently has proficiencies in that regard?
It happened out of necessity, which unfortunately came too late. But from a coaching standpoint, there were 2 major strategic blunders that the Atlanta Reign, myself included, coaching staff made. One was, so we're doing very well in scrims all season long. All season long, we're scrim warriors. We're only losing scrims to Shock, Philly, and Paris. Okay, on average. We'll drop scrims to other teams on occasion, but overall, our record, Shock, Philly, and Paris were the only teams that. And even those teams, we're competitive in them scrims. Like we have like a 40% map win rate. It's just 60-40. And so we go into a week and we're winning games and scrims using Tracer, Eddie on Tracer, because Eddie had a phenomenal Tracer last.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But on the ladder, Genji's meta. Genji just got buffed. He's insane on the ladder, right? But we're winning games using Tracer and scrims. And so we stuck with the Tracer. Why? Because we want to keep Eddie in the server. Why? Because Eddie is having a phenomenal season. So, and we're not sure. He's not comfortable in Genji. But Eddie says, I'd rather play Tracer than Genji. Literally, the player says that. So you've got your solid performance in scrims. You've got the player that you want to keep in the server literally telling you they're more comfortable in Tracer than Genji. But then you've got the ladder meta basically saying Genji's strong. And then the day before a match, you know what I mean? We lose badly to Philly, and they're playing Genji. EQO just like takes a dump on us, playing Genji. And Dogman is like, dude, we got to play Genji. This is crazy. I just can't do anything, But against that, we have the good results earlier in the week. We've got Eddie saying he's not comfortable in the hero. And, we want to keep Eddie in the server because, we don't have a ton of confidence in that moment. Saucy's Genji. And then we just keep losing. We just keep losing playing Tracer. Like, it's been figured out. It's been figured out how to play Genji properly, and now Tracer looks bad. But it's so late. We have a match, literally tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, what do we do? And so then, kind of just in the midst of it, Eddie starts flexing on the Genji. And because he has chemistry with the team, we're starting to kind of just barely make it work. And we still lose. We lose to, who do we lose to? Toronto, 2-3 that week.
Mm-hmm,
Embarrassing loss for us under the circumstances. with Eddie trying to basically flex to the Genji like last second. And so that was a huge blunder on our part from a coaching perspective. Like coach's job is sort of see past the good results in scrims, see past the comfort level of the player, and see the meta for what it is. So we failed that way. And then we had a similar failure in the playoffs when we forced what the Philly comp basically, right? Like the brawl comp with the Reaper Sombra, Lucio, right? When the real meta was, of course, ended up being like the Washington comp, and then the variation of that, which is the run the Sigma instead of the Zarya when you're in a mirror, right? So Shock, right? Shock was making a similar mistake, but then Shock starts losing to Washington in the middle of the match, right? To the superior comp, and they change it up in the middle of the match and they pull out a victory, right? Whereas we lost in a mirror, so to Florida, who didn't find a good EMP that game, didn't find any. So we eventually lost in a mirror, but in all honesty, it's still a blunder in the sense that we played the wrong comp. We should have played Florida running the meta comp. Should have played Florida running something not a mirror. That's on us. I don't remember what the original topic was that we were discussing here, but
about Edison just suddenly being able to be a flex DPS apparently.
Yeah, it kind of just came out of nowhere, as in like, okay, we got a day left. We've been winning with Tracer, but now we're not winning with Tracer anymore. And Eddie's scrimmed with the team all week, and Erster and Saucy haven't. We got to play Genji. Eddie just pulls it out.
Yeah. Okay, so this is one thing where I'm still so unsure. So I thought like I'll just give you the question and see where you take that, because like I remember writing an article about like the most promising rookies coming into the season. You guys had recruited Hawk, and I was like, okay, this is. I think I put him in second, like second most likely for me to be rookie of the season. Now, I don't think he has had a bad season. I wonder, like, how do you view his season? Was he underrated? Did I overrate him as a rookie, like thinking that he was going to perform better than he actually is capable of? Or do you think he still has a lot left unlocked, which he was able to show more in ATL Academy?
I think he had an underrated season. I think he performed better this season than people credit for. I think he put out a lot of damage, and he died a fair amount, but he didn't die like an obscene amount. If you were to go look at his Sigma stats right now, like they would all be pretty strong across the board. But really, I don't think Hawk had a bad season. I thought he was a very strong Sigma player for the team. Hawk's weaknesses are typically related to like peeling, and it's the number one thing that he's been working on is like play diva. Like how can you be a support player for the team?
Sorry, last part cut out again.
How can you be a support player for the team instead of being like a damage dealing diva, stuff like that? So these are things individually that Hawk's working, but I think he's an exceptional player. I think he's one of the better off tanks in the league, in my opinion, and people will find that out. I think he's extremely right now. He's looked at as like one of the worst off tanks in the league, and I really think he's like at least top 10. So I think he's underrated. I do think he has more potential to unlock. He's not perfect, and he's been working hard in the offseason. He's been playing a lot in the offseason. He really wants to win next season, so I think he's going to show something good.
Nice. Okay. You also like adjusted a little bit during the season, and one thing. Okay, this is my personal battle with league rules. But I always wondered, like, how you guys were technically able to pick up Saucy. Because, like, I think there was a cutoff, and Saucy was not 18 by that time that we officially knew about. And then you were still able to pick him up. So, did you run that past anyone? Like, how did that go?
So the way that happened is actually the age cutoff deadline is tied to the trade window closing deadline. So when the age cutoff is basically on the same day that the trade window, and the trade window is usually around the end of stage. beginning of stage 3. It's something like that, right? It's related to like the schedule of the league itself. And so when the league gets delayed for any reason, such as COVID, what happens is the trade window deadline and therefore the age eligibility deadline shifts with it. So actually the age eligibility deadline moved, and that's when we realized, oh, Saucy's now eligible. Similarly, this season, the age deadline started beginnings of the offseason. When they didn't know when the league was going to start, they thought the age eligibility deadline was June 30th, and now it's like July 30th.
Sorry, can you repeat the
Now it's like it was June 30th this season, and now it's July 31st. Now that they've figured out, okay, the season's going to start April 17th, and this is our season schedule, here's the new age eligibility deadline.
Right.
You know? The last season that happened mid-season because of COVID delays.
Yes.
Right. But this season, it's like the league just started later than they originally thought it would. And so now here's like the new date. And the new date is like July 31st or something like this, I think. And so players that were previously thought to be ineligible, such as Kilo, for example, from Korea, now he's eligible. But of course, every roster's been built. Right. So it's now difficult for Kilo to get into the league at this point. But, he could be a big midseason pickup for just about any team.
Yeah, I wonder if players that turned 18 very late into the season, once the this contingency rule that you could pick up players if you were undershooting a certain threshold of players. I think it was 7 for the playoffs, and also like travel, yada yada. If you could have picked up, logically, if it's tied to the closing of it, then theoretically, I think your recruit to fill up that 7th slot could have probably been someone that only turned 18 closer to that window, right? Does that make sense?
Are you talking about like the DK thing like last season now? Yeah, I mean, I'm
not specifically the DK part, but the mechanism by which he was brought into the justice, theoretically speaking, could I have picked up someone at that time of the season that only like turned 18 3 days before that, for instance?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think the rules are written that way, so I don't think they would have allowed that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these are in my mind 2 separate issues. The below 6 player thing seems abusable to me. You know what I mean? Because you can just cut players whenever you want, and then engineer a reason to bypass the trade window. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't seem right to me. But this age eligibility thing, so long as it's communicated to everybody in the league and it's the result of some clear policy that's consistent season over season, I'm a little more okay with.
Yep.
But I don't pretend to be well versed in that on how that whole DK trade went down, but something about it felt a little.
Yeah.
Not maybe they did everything by the book, but it didn't feel right to me as a fan of the game. Basically, I'm glad that DK got a shot, and I'm glad that they did well. But I do feel bad for the teams that had to be on the losing end of that proposition.
Yeah, I agree, and I remember basically getting that part of my brain that once had been in law school out and just like going full lawyer mode on the specific phrasing that the league at least publicly announced. And there were 2 specific things that I found to be not following from what they gave us. Then again, like we also didn't know about the eligibility rule as a public, right? So yeah, I think in terms of transparency, we can improve there. Now, okay. Another player that you picked up, and it's tragic that he's known for that, but like Iris is probably only or mostly known to the community because he didn't have much time to show himself off just yet, but for the confusion about his L and I start. So can you fill in everything else, the blanks about what kind of a player he is, and indeed you trusted him enough to be your starting flex player, right?
Yeah. Well, so a couple of things about Iris, whatever. By the way, he has officially changed his name. It is now capital I R.
Very good.
One. Okay, so it has been corrected, to normal standards of English.
Right.
But I think he was a player that was pretty heavily impacted by his ping. So when he was on Contenders team here in the US, he was playing the US, and he was like unpaid, basically. I mean, or he was not being paid, and then I think they worked it out later. But he was basically he was here in the US. He was playing a low ping, and then when you join the Overwatch League, the only way to compete in the Overwatch League is with a P1 a work visa, athletic visa, which we were not able to get in time. We weren't able to get his visa until after the season just ended, basically. So he had to play the season on high ping, but I think he's developed his gameplay and his style. Like if you watch Ears play, he plays on like the razor's edge. Like he plays for like the clutch sleep. He plays for like the clutch lamp. He plays for like the clutch, like he min maxes his efficiency, and ping is a part of that. And when you have a high ping, suddenly that style of play falls apart very heavily. Whereas if you're just like heel botting, just always focus. Like, okay, I wasn't going to say any names, but yeah, sure. If that's the kind of player you are, then the ping affects you less.
Yes.
But if you're the kind of player that plays at the razor's edge, then the ping affects you a lot. And I do think the ping affected Ears a lot. When you guys see him play on low ping next season, I think he will surpass whatever you saw from him this season. And of course, he's been doing very well in the Korean ladder back home this offseason. Like he's top ranked accounts. He's got 2 accounts in the top 10, something like that. Like, maybe it's just 1, but he had rank 1 at some point this season. I think maybe Violet took it from him. I'm not sure, but he's doing very well, individually. He's working on himself. His Zen has improved a lot. His BAP has always been good. I think he's going to have a much better season. He had a great Moira in the playoffs. Like, we lost in the playoffs, but his Moira was pretty exceptional in that series, those games. But yeah, we are very happy to have him.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I got to open a tangent because I think the topic has been, I think the mode of thinking that you're using is quite interesting. So I understand that ranked is important. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Now, you also talk about numbers, and we do have a lot of statistical analysts in the league. I think sometimes we don't talk enough about that aspect. But is there any particular way you look at numbers, so to speak? Like, what kind of numbers do you look at? Let's say you have someone from the ladder, you don't know much about him. Like, what kind of numbers are you looking at in order to figure out if this guy is good or whatever?
It varies from hero to hero.
Mm-hmm.
Certain heroes
course,
you look
yes.
at certain things. Yeah, I mean, for example, you could be looking at a tracer player, and you might look at like pulse bomb kills,
right?
As a ratio to pulse bomb sticks, and you could probably, without even watching the player, just by looking at the ratio between the kills and the sticks, know whether this player is somebody who likes to pulse bomb tanks, or frequently goes for pulse bombing like squishies in the backline. Very high value to kill squishies with pulse bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's how you win team fights. You stick the brig.
Yeah.
You win the team fight. Right, like that's how it works. So there's certain things you look for in the ratios. You can look at hero damage overall. You can look at death counts, see how much they feed. Or as an indication as to like what kind of healing resources they might take. Like there's all sorts of things to look at. It really is hero specific. And you never look at stats as like the end all be all of a decision. You look at stats as like, okay, this is worth further investigation. Let's get some POV footage. Let's see him actually play the game in competitive scrims or in matches or something. But stats are like a great, basically, place to start filtering.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, some of the most hyped up players and contenders just generally also have the highest hero damage counts on the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
So, just if you just want one stat to look at, just generally, just look at hero damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hero damage per 10.
Yeah. I think what we figured out like during that time, or what Roy figured out during the time at Winston Slam, it's unfortunately really hard to build this in clients, but Captain Planet has managed to do that for Overwatch League. It's basically the idea of first kill against first death and scoring those and conversion of those, right? Is that something you would sort of like to see incorporated into the ladder, or do you not think that's that good of a stat?
No, I think that could be a good stat. Yeah, that would certainly tell you something.
Right. So let's see. Okay, so I think in terms of season 3, like yes, you very occasionally got beaten by bad teams. I think generally speaking, you beat most, or I think you in that regard you were one of the most consistent teams and actually beating the teams you're supposed to in terms of like below you in rankings. As you said, like the Toronto game is a problem. It also ended up being a problem because you didn't. That kind of kept you from securing top 5, I think, in NA, or didn't contribute towards it. I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2 wins that you were lacking on Valiant, and that would have, of course, helped. Play with playoff seeding. You have to play with one less match.
Yeah, if we had just won one more game, I think we would have. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, we won our play-ins anyways, so we made it. In the end, but
yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, you didn't, for instance, make a final, let's say, of a tournament or like that type of stuff. So in hindsight, like, how do you evaluate what you did during season 3?
Well, I mean, across season both 2 and 3, we have like maybe the 6th best map differential in the entire league.
Yeah.
And so in terms of map wins, we always do very well. Like we've won a lot of maps in season 2 and 3. Like so we're able to win maps. We're able to trade punches with opponents. But we have a tremendous amount of. You say that we have a lot of 3-0 victories, or like that we always beat the teams we're supposed to beat. Last season, the exception was, of course, Toronto, and I mean we beat Toronto many times, but we lost to them once, and we lost to Vancouver as well once.
Yes.
There were some teams that we lost to that we didn't. But we also have a lot of, I think, between both season 2 and 3, we're like the kings of losing games 2-3. Like we go to map 5 and we just don't win. Like last season we lost to Philly 2-3. We lost to Shock 2-3. We lost to Paris 2-3. So three top teams that beat us 3-2. But we were very competitive in those. It's not like we were getting embarrassed by them. But I just, on the whole, I think we're just a team that fails to clutch. Like we put up a competitive series, but we lose the map 5, and I think that's one of the hurdles we got to get over this season. We need to do better at Koth in particular. If we can clean up our Koth game, I think we can go a lot further.
Right. That's interesting because I recently was researching like another team, and I think I gotta disappoint you there. I think the kings of losing map 5s is actually the Outlaws throughout there. I think
it's Austin Outlaws. Yeah, it's Austin Outlaws. Both teams basically have like just lost 1 million map 5s.
Yeah, 6 and 22, I think they are over franchise history. Yeah,
that's so bad.
Yeah. So like in that regard, it's also interesting that the Outlaws are also like, if I ask teams like which teams underperformed in real matches, but like were actually good in scrims, Outlaws is also frequently a name that's brought up in next to you guys, right?
So. Right, and in a scrim, you play 6 maps, but only 2 of those are Koth. Generally, you usually play 4 maps that are not Koth and 2 that are Koth. But then in a match, obviously, if you play 5 maps, 2 of those are Koth.
Yeah.
So even the ratio of Koth performance, you're more likely to overperform in scrims if you're bad at Koth than you are relative to a match, just slightly. But
yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So
not only that, but in a match, right? Koth is the first map you play, and it's the last map you play. So if you underperform at Koth, just out of the gate, you're down 0-1. You've lost momentum in that series. And that momentum, that sort of element of momentum, weighs on you more in a match than it does in like a scrim. If you lose map 1 of a scrim, so what?
Yeah. No, that's definitely okay. So when I heard 2CP was going to be the game mode that was going to be killed for Overwatch 2, I was a little bit disappointed because I wanted it to be Koth.
Really?
Yeah, I've always found it's like the penalties of Overwatch, if that makes sense. Doesn't resemble what other game modes do as well as 2CP often does. while like the particular position has more openings and therefore more strategical depth, I think like moving across terrain and whatnot like just opens up for more interesting rotations that just tell a better story. I think. But given that you like the what you just said about control is what do you think about the game mode? Like, would you also have rather seen that being killed instead?
I'll agree with you to the extent that I think a good tracer player can really carry a Koth game, or like a good DPS player can really carry a Koth game. But on the flip side, I do think in other game types, like on a payload, a good Ashe can really carry, game. You know what I mean? Like I think each of these game modes have their own flavor of how you win and how you lose. And like you can't make broad-based generalizations. I'm not really uncomfortable with any specific game mode. I'm uncomfortable with some specific maps. I hate Volskaya. I think this is like one of the worst maps in the game.
Yeah.
And yet I love Horizon Lunar Colony. And
really?
Yet that's out of rotation. Yeah. So, like I some of the maps really more than anything get to me. And what I really would like to see, and this is a different topic for a different day, but my real hope for Overwatch 2 is nothing to do with the game modes available, like 2CP versus Koth versus whatever. My real hope for Overwatch 2 is to have mirrors on the ranked ladder. I would like mirror matchups because I think right now with the comp variety that's out there, every game is just like an amalgamation, hodgepodge of different people playing their comfort picks.
I agree.
And the synergy, part of the synergy that makes Overwatch, beautiful, like when goats, for all goats' flaws, you really felt like you were clicking as a team.
Yeah.
When you did stuff, you know what I mean? And many other comps, dive comps, with an Ana and a Winston, like Ana connects on the Winston and the Winston pops off, you know what I mean? Or like Genji Blade, like all of these things, like you can really feel the synergy. And right now in the ladder, it just feels so gross to me. Like you have Lucio, paired with heroes that don't benefit from Lucio. You have Mercy paired with heroes that don't benefit from Mercy. Tanks, like tank picks all over the place. Like it's just so chaotic and so unsatisfying to me. The level of, you've got 12 different heroes on the server doing 12 different things.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like sometimes. Everybody's kind of playing their own game. It doesn't feel like fun Overwatch to me. I would like to see more.
Yeah. I mean, it's like people then appreciate and know what they actually have to do, what they expected to do in that particular comp, right? And you can also do better comparisons. I would even argue that having comp stability adds to people understanding what's actually going on the server in esports situations, where it's like now like I can acquire the taste for the comp. I can also start to understand how the comp works and have like benchmarked or understood benchmarks of when someone's playing well, when that's not the case. And I had a big point, for instance, last season about I think it was Chengdu against Shanghai, which just felt like a really chaotic game. I'm not sure if that's the mode of feeling that the general viewer is always under, but I think like having some compositional stability can only help with understanding Overwatch as well, right?
Yeah, there's definitely an element to that. What I don't really mind the process of discovery, like it's pretty fun to be in a ranked game and to figure out how do my heroes work together. You know what I mean? Like how can I make Lucio work with a Winston? That's kind of fun in a sense, but it's only fun when the other team has the same handicap. If you're trying to figure out how to make Lucio work with a Winston while the other team's running like Ana Zen with their Winston, you know what I mean? Or something like that, just Ana, right? I mean, you're at a huge handicap in that game. You're trying to figure out how to make your heroes that don't have natural synergy work together while dealing with the imbalance of the other team having the superior comp. You know what I mean? And it just makes for a miserable experience where everybody just yells at everybody to swap. How, is that why you get on the game? You get on the game so you can go into a ranked game and listen to people yelling at each other to switch their heroes? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, is that fun? Does that make you stay and get on every day and come back to Overwatch? Like it's a miserable experience socially. You know what I mean? Which is part of what online gaming is. So I just think this is like the number one issue to address heading into Overwatch 2 is how do you fix the social component of the game where it's not literally people just telling each other what hero they need to pick, why they need to pick it, trying to explain the XYZ of this comp versus that comp.
Yeah.
If we don't get this, we're going to lose. But if we have this, we can win. It's just like debate class in a ranked game. It's not fun.
Yeah.
Not why you got on to play.
Yeah. And I think it's also always like philosophies are at odds. I think some people want to make the team work and want to do the best for the system. And then others, which is equally rationally, say, I'm here for my own fun. So I play whatever, and you guys are responsible for your fun. I'm having fun. Even if you pick off meta picks, I don't care that much. I'm just doing my selfish stuff. I think that has its place. It's just the type of game that Overwatch is, it just somehow feels worse.
Yeah, but that's why my answer to the solution or to the problem is to go mirrors, because if somebody really wants to get on and play McCree, and they only want to play McCree or whatever, let's pretend you go into a mirror game, and maybe there's even a checkbox to say I only want to play a ranked game if I get to choose a hero, and maybe my queue time doubles. I don't get that my way.
Mm-hmm.
But you go into a game, you pick McCree or whatever, and the other team has a McCree. Both teams have the same heroes. You know what I mean? But you still get the heroes you want to play, and you get to kind of play your way. You know what I mean? Like you because you had the hero selection choice that particular game, you got to make everybody play the way you want to play. Maybe it's like two teams, like Team A and Team B. Okay, Team B got to pick the comp, and Team A had to pick the comp that Team B chose.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe there's like an MMR mismatch. Maybe Team A that didn't get to choose their heroes,
right? Slightly
lower MMR. And the team that got to pick their heroes, I'm sorry, the other way around. Like the team that got to pick their heroes has a lower MMR.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though they're on their comfort picks, they're up against stronger opponents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Slightly higher SR rating. Whatever. There's a million ways you could do it, but at the end of the day, I don't really care how they fix the problem. What I want is like a ranked game to stop being people arguing with each other somehow, some way.
Yeah.
You just got to remove this element because it's mentally draining.
Yeah.
And the H key does have an impact. There's no way to balance the game point. Like all you've done, like they've done lots of balancing over the years, right? Where they've made it so that no single hero dominates the server. Brig no longer dominates the game. Like if you're not automatically losing if you don't have a Brig on your team. You're not automatically losing if you don't have a Sigma on your team.
Yeah.
Right? But the imbalance is still there. A team that puts together a well-crafted team comp, like if they have a Ball, a Zen, a Tracer, and a Diva, you know what I mean? Like a dive composition that actually synergizes from a dive standpoint. Discord for the Tracer, low healing, but you're on Ball, so on and so forth. All of this stuff, it all kind of comes together. If you're up against a team that's running running Orisa, Lucio, Mercy with like Tracer, Genji, who's going to win that game? Obviously, it's going to be the team that picks 6 heroes that actually synergize with each other against the team that didn't. And so there's still this element of free wins and free losses where people are constantly trying to get each other to correct the comp. But because the game is so balanced, people try to get it to correct it in their own way. It's like the Lucio player saying, I'm not going to switch. The tanks, you switch to Reinhardt, Zarya, and Mercy, can you go Moira? And then the Mercy player is like, no, I don't want to play that way. DPS, can you go Ashe? And can you guys go Ball? And Lucio, can you go Zen? You know what I mean? Like everyone has their own vision of how they want to win.
Yeah.
But it still involves 6 people collectively agreeing to do something, which basically never happens on the ladder.
Yes.
And so it's just a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's an issue that definitely isn't just like top 500 stuff where people get mad at the one tricks that somehow got there as Symmetra or whatever. But something that probably goes down all the way to bronze, where you're constantly negotiating and playing a game of politics rather than a game of Overwatch very often, right? And I think
I'd rather people just be talking about how they're going to win by working together rather than swap to play my way.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Okay, so then as like a last big topic, of course, like I think we're now about 7 weeks out from 6.5 something and you kind of had to slim down your team. You picked up new players, and once again, I mean, it feels like when you are on a team, you're getting incredible DPS players at this point. Like, it's, yes, you're also, like, I would argue, if not the best, then one of the best DPS scouts. But it's also that you somehow, you're also one of the best seducers of the best DPS that are in the Overwatch League. And of course, I'm talking about Pelican. Now, I can't imagine that this guy wasn't highly contested. And probably highly contested by also very well-paying teams, probably also, like, highly skilled teams. Not sure if, like, every team needed a player with that profile specifically, but it's still interesting that he ended up choosing you guys. So how does one pull a heist on the league on a player like that?
I mean, yeah, Pelican had like 4 offers, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it was 5, I'm not sure, but he had like 4 offers. And, Kai had multiple offers too. Like, all of our players that we get every season, Erster, I think, had like 5 offers. We got him, like, it's a very common thing for, not every player that we pick up, many of them have a very strong reputation, and we have to win them over other teams. I would say that, just generally speaking, players are much higher in Atlanta than the fans are. We're scrim warriors. We do well in scrims. We have a reputation for doing well in scrims. Our Atlanta Academy players had a great reputation for how they performed against teams in scrims when they were like a team. Our guys are always active on the ladder, doing very well on the ladder. So, like, our players are well known, and we just have a strong reputation among players, I would say. Our team, our organization. It's a lot easier than you would think in that sense, because players really do respect our team.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked very hard to build that respect. Obviously, offers are not created equal. There's financial terms. There's if you're joining the Atlanta Reign this season, you're on a tight-knit 7-man roster. Your odds of getting playtime are much higher than if you're joining like a team that already has like 8-9 players on it. You don't have to compete for your spot. But yeah, you just make the case. Make the case as to, like, okay, here's your very clearly defined role in our team. Here's what we need from you. Here's all the other pieces we have. Here's how hard everyone's working. Like, you just make the pitch, And I make those pitches every year, and they seem to go well. I don't know.
Right. Now, I think a large amount of people who will be watching this probably haven't watched as much Contenders Korea, and might even be interested to see your thoughts, because the direct competition, and I'm not sure if you would even agree with that, but theoretically would have been keeping Saucy, who's a known entity for you guys. Like, how did you land with Pelican? What kind of a player is he, and why was that the decision you ended up making?
Well, I won't divulge Saucy's personal reasons.
Right.
But he's got some personal issues going on. There's some basically, he has a very good personal reason that he couldn't commit as heavily as we needed him to.
Right.
And then on top of that, we couldn't offer him a great offer this season either. So, there's reasons that Saucy's not on the team right now, but most of it has nothing to do with his skill as a player. He's an exceptionally skilled player, and any time that Saucy wants to essentially unretire, come back to the game, I think he could have great success. He just has some things he has to deal with. But not bad things about his personality, just life basically sucking.
Yeah. I think that's how it came off.
Yeah. In terms of also, we didn't want to go with what we were comfortable with. We wanted to make a splash. We wanted to mix things up, change things up. going with what you're comfortable with, generally speaking, especially in the DPS realm. I mean, how many star rookie DPS players take over the league every year? You know, do you want to go with your comfort picks on DPS and the Overwatch League has been? So, no, I mean, we wanted to mix things up, and we saw DPS as a great place to do that, as opposed to port line and tanks, which try to keep stable. You know what I mean? DPS, I look at it as basically the most competitive role in the game. You know, in terms of the skill that's required and the amount of people grinding that. And so, you know, there's a lot of great DPS players out there. They're all working very hard to be the best, they make their mechanics hit new heights. And you want to go with the guys who are hungry. And Pelican's hungry. Pelican proven to be a tremendously flexible player. He's not even just a projectile specialist. Like, he's got as good of a tracer as anybody, you know. Not anybody, but his tracer is quite exceptional, you know, in the context of him being a projectile player. And he can even play heroes like Ashe and stuff. We're not going to ask him to, you know, but Pelican works very hard in his game. He is really a ultimate flex DPS player.
Yeah. And that's like what you're saying about like if people source their brain about how close it always is to for the rookie of the player to also seriously be considered the MVP, and how often that also is the DPS role. I think this rings really true. Like, Yaki is a name you would bring up. Lip is a name you would bring up. Technically speaking, Huxley was that once, even though we can talk about what rookie really means. I'm
not saying you have to get rookies on DPS. There are many veterans in the game right now that are just proven quantities. They've worked hard every single season to maintain or improve. You know, I mean, Violet, Striker, like Babybay had his best season in his last season. Like, I'm not discounting veterans at all. I'm not trying. What I am saying is that they have a lot more to prove in terms of their work ethic, in terms of being able to show that they can continue to push the limits of their gameplay. And so it's not every person has it in themselves to become a star veteran. You have to really have the discipline to work hard to hit that level. You have to maintain it over many seasons, many off seasons, many bouts of up and down motivation. Like, you have to be rock solid.
Right. Now, as you mentioned, like, you guys also had to cut down numbers and then figure out how to work from there. And I think the answer that you found is one that a lot of other teams also agreed with, which is if you have to have 7 players, maybe 8 or whatever, like the first one that you're setting up with 2 players, so with a substitute players, it's likely to be that the DPS role will be the most advantageous. Downside being, for instance, for roles like, let's say, main support, who had to flex to the second flex support in some matters frequently. And then also some teams last year, like I'm thinking about the Shock specifically, I also had backup tanks to help bridge a very different hero pool, I feel like, that the tank role has to cover. So do you have any concerns about your starters, like in terms of Gator and Masaa, being able to cover the full range of tasks that the game will ask of them?
Well, I do think DPS just makes the most sense because it's the largest hero pool, you know, also the most mechanically intensive. I think the second one that makes the most sense to have an extra is going to be the flex support thing. That is where you have to play BAPZen flex support capacity.
Sorry, can you say it again? Like,
you have to play BAPZen or double flex support in some capacity. You know, having 2 actual flex support players is great. But I do think that there has been an element here where all the pro players saw what happened last season. And so many of the main support players made a concerted effort to improve their flex supports. For example, Funny Astro, he used to play at extremely high sensitivity, which made him extremely good at Lucio, but you know, not as impressive at many other heroes. Funny Astro went through the very difficult process last season of cutting his sensitivity in half and then cutting it in half again. Something like this. Some crazy reduction in his sensitivity. When most players try to attempt this, they fail completely. They give up. You know what I mean? Like, they lose a couple of games at the outset, you know, and they're just like, I can't play with this new sense. too hard. I'm a bot, you know. To actually see that through all the way to the end, and to actually come out the other end of it, being comfortable on a new sensitivity that is more friendly to playing like flex support heroes because you want to be a reliable support player for your team, you know, on either role. That takes a lot, you know? And Funny Astro started to do it. Funny Astro's BAP by the end of the last season started to look really impressive compared to where it was when Academy. So, I think this kind of transition can be done even by the players within a certain role. So I think Masaa has what it takes to be as good of a flex support as like some of the best flex supports in the league. Probably not. He's not putting in that kind of time. You know what I mean? But can you throw up a passable BAP when we need it? Probably. And can Pelican play Brig? Yes, he can. For whatever reason, he's able to do that. So,
Right.
you know, we have other flexible players on the roster that could switch roles if we really needed it to be the case.
Right.
I think on the tank role in particular, it's totally okay to have two tanks right now. I think many tank players, if they just put in hours, can learn the other tanks. Like Gator has put in a tremendous amount of time this offseason to becoming very comfortable on like Hog, for example. Put in more time on Sigma. But like we trust our tank players right now, and they get really fast queues in the ladder too. So, you know, we trust our tank players right now to play any mixture of tanks. Doesn't matter. And I think tank has the easiest time of this. I think if you want extra man in terms of your rotation, you want DPS flexible.
Right. Now, another thing, like another guy you picked up this offseason was Kai. Now, the circumstances of that are, of course, like very unique. I wonder, like, how long did it take you from that information hitting your desk to talking to someone that you might be interested in that and then making that move?
The information hitting my desk, we followed up immediately. You know, like immediately. As to a final decision, though, you know, there was a lot to grapple with there in terms of like at SharP. You know, SharP was still, you know, in Sweden, but he was working on his game and working on getting ready to come over here. And you know, so we had commitments with him, so it was not an easy decision to kind of make an offer for Kai. But he did really fit the role that we need, which is like a dedicated ranged hit scan player. Exceptional talent. He had a tremendous season last season. Proven worker. He has a lot of games on the ladder. You know, he really grinds the game. He really cares about self-improvement. He focuses his self-improvement on his specific role within the team, which is what we need. So there was a lot of reasons to get Kai. And in the end, yeah, we made the very tough decision to put in an offer. And that's not to say, and I know that seems cruel to SharP, but in my mind, if SharP made a good chunk of money while he was on the reign, he has a savings, you know, he's in a better position right now to go pro than many players in tier 2. Many players in tier 2, if they want to go pro right now, they're grinding to be in the Overwatch League with less talent than SharP has, and also less money, less resources to take care of themselves. Like they have to think trade-offs, jobs, school, all this stuff, whatever. SharP is in a position where even though he's cut and even though he's teamless and whatever, if he really wants to grind his way back into the league, he has the resources and the talent to do so. You know what I mean? Like there's always an open position for a player that has clear demonstrable talent. He just needs to work his way back to that spot. And he has to narrow his focus onto a specific role. If he can do that, I think he can get back into the league. So on the one hand, it's cruel, but on the other hand, I think SharP is still able to do it if he wants to. And, you know, I hope he does. But in terms of Kai, yeah, we made a move we acted very quickly to at least assess the situation. We didn't make an offer right away, but we assessed the situation immediately. Started to anyway.
Right. Yeah, and towards the SharP situation, I think in an underrated aspect, even though, yes, like the COVID situation is not great, the visa situation is not great. So, but in all other regards, especially like there are upsides to the 30-day clause where like if you sign players and actually they didn't negotiate their 30 days, that also means that we probably will see a little bit more traction in the league in terms of ability to be picked up mid-season, possibly. Depends. I think that's also an underrated aspect of that part. But yeah, I think it's still worth grinding during the season, right? It's not like you should probably just go like wait until the next season starts. Do you feel the same way? Do you think there's more opportunity for players to be picked up mid-season this year?
Well, yes, I think the 30-day, clause that exists for many of the newly signed players does mean that you could see more roster turnover in the middle of the season, and I don't think that that's a bad thing per se. I mean, it's bad in the sense that like players can get cut for 30-day salary, although that is a negotiable clause, and a player who negotiates at the outset of creating the contract can negotiate for longer. But there are situations of teams basically getting griefed by players making insane salaries but not working hard. How do you feel it if you're a player on a team and you look at your teammate and he's working 1/3 or 1/4 as hard as you are and making double your salary? How do you feel about that? How should we feel about that player? You know what I mean? Like, there's there are, and they can't go get a different player that is hungrier because they have promised a guaranteed salary to this other player. You know what I mean? Like that happens all the time in the league too. So I don't think this rule change is terribly bad. I do think 30 days might be a little slim, and maybe it could go up a little bit from there. But I think the concept of being able to cut players that are clearly underperforming and or not trying anymore for whatever reason, that's a pretty good thing. In terms of SharP specifically, let's be clear, he has a visa. He has a visa. He can come to the U.S. today if some team wants him.
Yeah, that's a big bonus.
Yeah. So we at least got to the point where he has an active visa through the end of the year, and so if he wants to grind midseason to try to get on a team, he can even join teams that are not outside of Europe. Totally join a U.S. based team if one of those teams wanted to give him a shot.
Yeah, and keep in mind also like we're playing a lot of cross-continental Overwatch this year with the European teams also playing East Coast. So even if not, there's still a potential, right? There's also the potential that the European teams might need someone, for instance. Right? It depends on the contract structures that these guys signed. Not too sure about the share of people that actually kept the 30-day clause in there. So how much mobility there will be remains to be seen. I think also what's worth pointing out is, well, this is very, very, and I'm personally, I agree that it's too short and it's anti-player, but firing someone and getting someone new is a zero-sum game of suffering, so to speak. Someone's really happy and someone's really sad.
I think there are players that should have been in the league, were denied opportunities to get into the league because some other player who didn't deserve to be in the league had a guaranteed spot, guaranteed salary. So I do not consider the rules to be anti-player. I don't like that characterization.
Right.
Because really what it will mean is that the players that are performing and working hard will get their opportunities, and the players that are not are the ones that are going to get released. Do I like the idea of a player upending their life on the promise of an opportunity and then having to suddenly shift gears? No, I don't like that. So that's why I think the 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, idealistically, you're right. Practically, it could also just be, we kind of want to play elsewhere.
So just okay, yeah, sure.
Right. So, but being at the whims there is always like but again, once again, like I think that's also where agents come in and help you negotiate contracts that work for you, right? So, okay. So you get Kai as well. I imagine that, like, that is. I mean, okay, you have a competitive team this season. We can talk about how good you think this team is, but that, like as you said, is probably like a big attracting point, right, for a player like Kai. Is it once again the reputation that helped you, that you built up in order to get him to play with you guys? Yeah,
I mean, Kai's other offer, I won't say the team that he had an opportunity to go to besides us, but it's an extremely highly rated team. Ultimately, what ended up having to happen for Kai to come to Atlanta, Kai had to tell the other team that was interested in him, very highly rated team, that he wanted to play in Atlanta instead. And that team had awesome management that basically said, if that's where you want to go, okay, that's fine. We'll help you. We'll enable you to do that. You know what I mean? Like we won't. We'll stop. We won't take any action that'll force you to come play for us because we want you, even if that's not what if you'd rather go to Atlanta. So that's an awesome org that did that, and it's awesome that Kai chose us in the end. And part of how we got, how we pitched Kai to come to Atlanta is, hey, we're going to, number one, we're going to increase your salary a little bit. You didn't get paid much last year. We think you deserve more, so we're going to bump up your salary a little bit. But also, he really wants to play with certain players on the team that he respects a lot, Gator and Hawk among them, He likes the idea of being on a 7-man roster, tight-knit squad, where he's very likely to get playtime, get to showcase his skills, He knows that we're moving heaven and earth to try to get him to come to the States to play on low ping for all of our games over here. So, he really believes in sort of the vision for the team and the pitch that we made. And I think he's excited to come here. So,
Right.
It was his choice in the end where he goes. Like, it wasn't one of those situations where we just made the highest offer and we got him.
Right.
It wasn't that. Yeah. He chose to come here.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, to name the mechanism by which what you just said is possible is basically, for the listener, like, the Valiant are enticed to take the best offer there is. Now,
right.
So, like, what's the best buyout, basically, is what they are concerned about, right?
For example, what we could have done is we could have, instead of giving Kai a raise, we could have taken the money that we put into his raise and we could have just added that to our buyout offer, right? So then we make an even bigger buyout offer to the Valiant, and then you win the bidding war by just $1 more, and they send him to the team that paid the most, and then he's still making low salary this season, and he's not happy because he didn't get to choose where he goes. That's not the approach we take to building teams ever. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not. That's not a recipe for success. The player has to be in a place where they want to be in order to meet your own personal potential. And so we structure all of our offers in such a way where the player feels empowered to make a decision for themselves. And, then it's on them. And we, in the case of players like Violet, like, we never even got to that point in the discussion because he felt empowered to go to the shock.
Right.
But, so be it. You know what I mean? Like, we don't ever want to get a player that doesn't want to be here.
Right.
And I would say that the closest that we've ever had to that really is like Erster, in the sense that Erster, although he was happy to be on the ring and he enjoyed his teammates, he also, some part of him really wanted to be on like Shanghai.
Yeah.
That was just because he had ties there.
Yes.
So on the one hand, Erster's not unhappy on the ring. He's not unhappy. But he also had maybe like a slight chance of greater happiness somewhere else. And, we didn't try to sell Erster to Shanghai. We released him and let him go there, so, without a buyout. And, we would have had to pay Erster a lot of money to keep him anyway. So that, it was a financial for us as much as anything. But we wouldn't have made such a financial decision regardless if we didn't think that that's what the player wanted. And it was very clear by the end of this season that Erster, I think, wanted to go to Shanghai if he was there. So, we're all about enabling players to go where they want to go. If a player doesn't want to be on the ring anymore for any reason whatsoever, like, we're going to look for opportunities to correct that imbalance. You can't always do it on a dime. Like, if you're in the middle of a season and you don't have a replacement player lined up, sometimes it's difficult to accommodate that request immediately, but you can still have a vision that you're going to accommodate it eventually.
Right. Yeah. And if you think about it, it's like, he has ties, like, from Mighty AOD days with Moon, but also, like, DM, I think, was with him on his roster. It's just an understandable connection that I think a lot of people actually go for in terms of the league. Like, I know Volumal has this theory of, like, duckling, where very often you can tell that a player wants to follow the coach that they came up with. I think Dallas Fuel, there's no stronger case than that. Even though, to be fair, like, it's I think Rush was not the coach for everyone in that team, just how timelines went, of course.
frustrating because the coach is also the one who gets to push the agenda the most in terms of who the org pursues, right? So it's like, is it the coach pushing it because they want the players, or is it the players following the coaches? It's a little bit of both.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's also value in the trust that you build with the player, right? And just knowing what you get, right?
Yeah.
Now a wider season discussion. Like, okay, so you have your team figured out, and now we also know what the season structure will look like. And it's interesting this year, right? Like, we got the 4 tournaments, we have way less games, we have hero pools rotating in an interesting way, less frequently. We have the league points, even though we had something of that structure already last year. So overall, what's your take on this season? Do you think would you enjoy playing in it more, or will you? Or what do you think about it as a compelling product to view for fans, like all that stuff?
I don't know. Willing to keep an open mind. Yes. I'm still very much a proponent of land-based competitions.
Right.
And I don't mean the traveling type. I don't mean like the home away game, like the original home. I mean more tournament models, something where we can fill up a venue with a lot of fans, 1,000 or 2. But like anything that delivers more experiences, where we have a venue that's less frequent, but filled with like 10,000 fans, 20,000 fans. This is what's going to create the hype moments, the memorable moments, the ones you remember 2 seasons. And that's what I think we need to be in the business of, is building memorable moments. And I think that, the tournament structure is a good step in that direction. I don't think the hero pools necessarily hurt that. I think it can help it to a certain extent, but it doesn't hurt it, so long as it's not really frequently changing. So, step in the right direction for the infrequent changes. I'm still not sure how I feel about hero pools. I'm going to reserve judgment till the end of the season. Yeah, I want some stability in terms of narratives, and I would like to see memorable moments built by having sort of like 2 more marquee events. I do think that the playoff format in particular in previous seasons has sort of underwhelmed. I would personally love to see for the playoff format, and I don't think we know the playoff format yet, do we?
No, I don't think so.
But I would love to see some sort of group stage format, personally.
Sorry, you got to repeat that again. Last one.
Group stage in the playoff format, I think, would be amazing if they could do it.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect of it, especially if you can get together in a physical location. I think there's the probability of that as the world opens up, as vaccines are becoming more available. That's something to keep in mind. What it sounds like to me you were hinting at, though, is, would you have been a fan if, like, let's say the Overwatch League has a lot of foresight into what will happen in 2021. In August last year, they say, okay, we're committing to having Overwatch League Season 4 only played out of, let's say, Korea or Asia, and all the teams get in a physical location, much like the Blizzard Arena somewhere in Korea. Do you think that's a better entertainment product?
I do. Yeah, I think it was a mistake to spread out to the local regions. I think we should have all stayed. It doesn't have to be California; it could be anywhere. But I think we should have stayed in one place, played LAN games on a basis. Yeah,
but I'm just saying Asia because the likelihood of being allowed to have live audiences is bigger, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. No, that's an interesting viewpoint that I hadn't thought about. It's, of course, like, it's also really hard to foretell what will be happening. Like, what if, for instance, vaccines are found and they're also incredibly easy for some reason to produce? Suddenly the world is open and you're caught in that physical location. You once again can't actualize the premise, so to speak, of the league, even though I think that idea is also slowly crumbling to a degree.
I think it's kind of hard to undo what you've done, though. Like, for example, I'm currently sitting in the Atlanta Reign/Atlanta FaZe team facility.
Right.
Lots of money was poured into making this practice facility. And, the idea that we would just all relocate to Asia and give up on this investment now more difficult. There's
Yes.
momentum in a different direction now. So, I know we're not the only ones. Dallas Fuel, many others.
Right.
So, if such a drastic move were to be undertaken, it would not be without consequences.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all there's all benefits and stuff. Like I think, like I was watching the people from ESL talk about organizing IEM Katowice, and their basic idea was like the uncertainty is just killing for tournament organizing. And I think that's very much true in every esport, where it's like you want to have the absolute best solution towards the environment at the point that you host that particular event, but you would probably need to be a fortune teller in order to do that, right?
Yeah.
All right, then I suppose, okay, usually this would be the ultimate PR question, right? Where I would ask you, is this the best Atlanta Reign you've ever built? And then, especially the higher up the management ladder you are, the more unlikely I am to get a truthful answer and more PR answer. I think people have also learned to recognize you as someone that tells it how it is. So I'm interested where you take this question. So is this the best Atlanta Reign you've ever fielded?
Yeah, it is. I think so, for sure. I think, well, first of all, I'll just say this. We are not even though we have a small roster this season, we're not a budget team. Our average salary is 6 figures.
Yes.
Our average salary is 6 figures.
Mm-hmm.
We are paying our players reasonably well, and certainly above average for many other teams that are running smaller rosters, tighter budgets this season. We have not gone that route.
Yeah.
We've been prudent, but we haven't been stingy, I guess is what I would say. And we have a great facility this season. Last season, we played from our apartment. We've got a lot of resources basically at our disposal this time around that we didn't have last season. But I think the environment is going to be great. For example, we've got our players at an apartment complex that's a 5-minute walk here from the office. So every day, the players are going to wake up, be able to walk 5 minutes to the office, let the sunshine wake them up a little bit, go into practice, and we'll all do it together in a single place. And so the team environment is going to be pretty strong this season. The convenience level is still very high, and we'll be able to focus on the game a lot. And like I said earlier in the show, we made a huge effort this season to really make sure that the 7 players that we invested into are all really dedicated and working hard. That nobody's sort of not feeling, you go through bouts where I'm really feeling Overwatch right now. That's not how our guys feel right now. Our guys are feeling like they want to win. And, that was literally part of the decision-making process is how motivated are you right now? Show me how much are you playing ranked? How much you doing this? How much you doing that? You know what I mean? Demonstrate it to me. So we even for example, previous seasons, we didn't have ranked game requirements. This season, we have a ranked game requirement. You have to play X amount of games, every season. This season, it's just 300 games, 300 games on roll, so if you're a DPS player, you're playing 300 games of DPS at a high elo, not on a Smurf, not off rolling, and that's not a super high barrier considering Kevster is doing 800, 300 is totally achievable, right?
Yeah.
It's still a minimum. You still can't be basically playing League all season, off season, and not playing Overwatch at all, and we want our guys to be coming into the season kind of prepared and kind of enjoying the game. And I really think that the game really rewards grind. So when you ask me, is this the best Reign roster you've ever fielded? I think just collectively, if you have 7 guys all pushing really hard in the same direction, and they're all working hard, they will be hitting new heights. Even throughout the season, they'll be hitting new heights, And so what you will see in the end is the best we've ever done.
That's exciting. I think in terms of the managerial stuff then, because, okay, last season I was really intrigued by your setup idea because, keep in mind, COVID was another thing. The we would have traveled across North America a lot. And you guys shared, like, you had a mobile practice facility pretty much set up, like a van that would drive across America and just set up to have the best practice environments. Now, this season, arguably there's still, like, as we pointed out, incredible volatility. But I think that same mentality can transfer into whatever you have this season. So, as you said, like, you wanted players to be close to the facility and whatnot, and have it be a short walk and all these types of things. Is there anything else in terms of, like, the maintenance structure that you want to share that you are looking forward to getting an edge with?
Sure. So, I mean, just to recap, what you're talking about is last season when we were going to be doing the road games, we had it so that we would be essentially every time we traveled to a city, rather than relying on like the 2 hours or 4 hour window of practice that the host team could provide us, like to have a practice room of like, or to like go to like your local LAN center, which is like really small desks, not great PCs and things like that, for practice, not a private room necessarily. Our solution was to basically set up like a almost like at an Airbnb, set up a team house. Literally, like we have like a guy driving a van across the country with the computers, with the desks, right? The folding desks. And then we rent the Airbnb in the city. We set up the Airbnb in there, and then we get the practice out of that team house for like 2 days while we're at the event, or 3 days or whatever that week. That week that we're there, visiting whatever team to play that home game. Obviously, with COVID, all of that fell apart. It was for nothing. But this, we still have very much an emphasis on making sure that the practice space is good. So when we built this facility that we're in right now, we built it with esports in mind. So it's not just an office, like the practice room, the Atlanta Brain practice room. It has like your typical sound padding on the walls and stuff, but also the space itself is very large. We can kind of like spread out, not be worried about COVID or anything like that within our own practice space.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's like soft seating, bean bags, like it's just like a chill environment. It's kind of like our space, And the idea of having it so close to the apartments is that even after practice is over, players aren't going to be itching to go home and go to their apartment. They're going to just be like, this is such a cool, chill place to hang out with my teammates. It's going to, so-and-so teammate, you want to queue up some ranked games together, or you want to play this, or you want to do that. Like it's just going to be like a hangout environment as well as a practice environment. I'm not looking for the separation that work, like personal life separation. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking to create an environment where we're kind of like all in on being a team. If you want to go home, walk home to your apartment and go chill in your room, you can. And you can have a computer in your room too. You know what I mean? If you want some alone time, you can do that. But I want to have more of an opportunity that's optionally available for players to spend time with each other after practice and before practice, just whatever time of day they want. And still have it be like a comfortable environment. So that's kind of like what we aim for with our practice space. It's like 24-hour access. You could be here all day if you want to, or you could be here just during practice if you want to. We think the players are going to choose to be here more than just the practice hours, but still have that ability to go back to their apartment for personal time when they want.
Right. Does that entail like having food available and like that type of stuff that you could literally like spend free time?
Yeah, we have like a whole cafeteria area here. We don't have a team chef cooking meals this season. We're doing like catering and stuff instead. But we'll have food here every day. It's difficult because we have players of mixed nationalities.
Yes.
So we have Koreans and Europeans and Americans, and everyone has slightly different taste in food. But we've got plenty of storage space for drinks and snacks, and everybody, ramen is like a staple.
Right.
It's always ramen available. But I mean, Atlanta, there's a lot of food options in Atlanta as well. So, there's always that.
Right.
The other thing that we're doing is we went through the effort of getting 360 hertz PCs going.
Okay.
So we have PCs that can run Overwatch at 360 frames stably with a 360 hertz monitor. And just competitively speaking, the PCs they're going to be on are going to be the best ever. Is it a major difference between 240 and 360? No. But we did it. That's the kind of org we are. So.
Right. Yeah, and I think generally speaking, I think the practice is like the Overwatch League sends out like kits usually is my understanding, and then players play on that. Like I remember last season, like they had the particular case that you could see was used very frequently and all kinds
Yeah.
of stuff. And you just forwent that and just went with your own setups, my take, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right. So with everything,
that's part of the draw, right? Like when you're courting a player and you tell them you wanna have them join your team, right? You throw in there, hey, we've got the players primarily are in the league not to make money. Players are primarily in the league because they want to win. They're competitive,
right.
And so you tell them, hey, you're gonna have great teammates, coaching staff. You're gonna have the best computers. You're gonna have the best internet. We've got like a 10 gig dark fiber line coming in from Cox. You know what I mean? Like we've got everything you need to win. That really resonates with every player.
Yeah, and that was also something that, for instance, Pre said when he was on an interview with us, where he said they didn't make the best salary offers. They made the best competitive product to attract these. And it's like, in that regard, like it's a romantic idea that actually is true. Like people actually do care the most about winning and also being comfortable. And then somewhere along those lines is salary, right? Even though also in regards to salary, there are a lot of like buts and ifs of taxes and whatnot. So the equation of who you choose is definitely very complex for a player. But yeah, like that definitely like resonates with what others told me in terms of what is attractive to an Overwatch League player. And it's also cool to think about and conceive of our professionals as more than just mercenaries, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. The mercenary idea has not been my experience at all. Very much the opposite. Players click up. They have people that they trust, that they want to play with. They have coaches that they trust, that they want to play for, and they have organizations that they believe in. An organization, So this is why we've gone through the effort, is to build up a reputation. Atlanta's reputation among players, I think, is very strong.
Right. Now you mentioned that you expect maybe a ramping up during the season in terms of like, because you want to as you set it up, outwork in some degree the opponent, or at least have very productive like practice, as well as like players being enticed to just grind a lot. So what's the goal this season? Where would you be satisfied landing? Because keep in mind, this is also a very competitive season, it seems.
Yeah. Our goal is first. We're aiming for the very top. So, and I would never say otherwise. But I think what we will do differently this season is I think we will work a little harder. So, again, we have a small roster. There's no room for dead weight. There's no backups for anybody. You know what I mean? Everybody has a very clear role, right? And so you have to work to perform in your role. And so our expectations from the coaching staff and the organization to the players is very high. And I think the players have very, very high expectations in reverse as well. But in terms of what we will do differently, I think, is we will probably scrim more this season than we have in seasons past. So we have ranked requirements in the off season for players to play ranked games. But I think ranked has become so messy right now in terms of like hero compositions and things like that, that I do see us basically pivoting a lot of those ranked hours into just more scrim hours this season. I won't know for sure until we start scrimming and I see how players respond to the workload. But I do expect us to work very hard as a team. And there's no sort of passing the buck this season, Like there's no sort of like, oh, well, it's this meta, you should play that player, or like slot this guy in or slot that guy in. It's 7 players, 6 starters, 7 players with very clear roles. Our DPS players, you're responsible for these heroes, you're responsible for these heroes, so on and so forth. And we're just going to see how that goes, really, at the end of the day. But we expect we're not going to allow anybody to sort of slack off, basically.
Right.
And that goes for coaching staff as well. You know what I mean? So, coaching staff has to be held accountable as well. And, it's going to be basically an environment where everybody's comfortable being critical of everybody else. Players to coaches, coaches to players, the organization somewhere there in the mix, players to players, coaches to coaches. Like, we just want a horizontal sort of structure where everybody feels comfortable voicing their opinion. And because we're all working so hard, everybody's going to feel very entitled, sort of vent if they want to. You know what I mean? Because there's no passing the buck, as I said.
Right. I think with that, we can wish you a successful season. Not sure if luck necessarily will be required, even though like there is still some luck component, as in strength of schedule, and then also who you get drawn in the respective tournaments. Is there a goal to win a specific amount of tournaments? Do you care about the tournaments a lot?
I was surprised kind of in the off season how everybody seems to place so much emphasis on the regular season record, because for us, we've always been focused on the deep playoff runs.
Right.
It's the American in me, but for me, like in American football, like you can make it to the Super Bowl. You can have a terrible season. You can still make it to the Super Bowl. I mean, you're still considered the best team. But there were like a lot of experimental things we did during the regular season last season, for example. You know what I mean? We're more of a more chasing like a longer term goal in terms of like, figuring something out in terms of like, I'm not trying to say we didn't try to win every game, but we were willing to take risks during the regular season in pursuit of like some sort of like playoff ideal, I guess. As a result, I think we went like 11-12, or like we had one more loss than win in the regular last season.
Yeah, it's 11-12.
We've been eternally roasted for it. Whatever. I'm not going to care too much about those opinions. At the end of the day, we're gonna just pursue victory on our own terms. But I do think that we will just basically, in the environment that we have, we're going to go out swinging every single game. We don't have a deep roster. We don't need to experiment a lot. Like we're just, we're going to go in with a clear vision every match, and we're just going to try to win every game.
Nice. Then we say thank you for the interview, and good luck in the season.
Thanks, Iska. See ya.
A tough season against a much improved field in the Overwatch League lies ahead of the Atlanta Reign. Are 7 very hard-working players enough to have success in that environment? Such a structure sustainable? Can the Reign convert their scrim results into game day victories? Answers lie ahead with the start of the 4th season of the Overwatch League, kicking off on April 16. Until then, why not hit like, subscribe, and the bell notification to stay tuned to GGRecon's Overwatch League and general esports coverage. More interviews like the one you just watched are on the way.